We're going to be talking a little bit to Steve Millington this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. If you do not know who Steve is, he is the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party and joins us in studio on Tuesday mornings, and we usually have a breakdown of political news, really from, well, big primary day presidential today in some parts of the country. In fact, Guam yesterday voted, and Donald Trump won all 9 delegates to the convention. Now, remember, they will not vote in a general election, but like Puerto Rico and some of the other territories, they all have a say in the primaries. So that took place. And then we have a lot of races on the local level that have shaped up, lots of filings, and people are getting in late perhaps, but at least we have I think that we have one local state legislator who is running unopposed. That's Clark, right? He didn't end up, Steve, with any opponent at this point.
That's correct. Clark Kaufman, no one filed against him in either the primary or the general election. Jim Patrick did not have any opposition in either primary or general election. Many of the other local races around here do have challengers. In District 23, we got challenges in both of the House seats.
Yeah.
And in 24, we have challenges in Senate at both House seats. 25, Maxine Bell has a challenger in the House seat. In 26, Legislative District 26, I apologize. I got to be more definitive. That is Blaine County, Lincoln County, Gooding County, and Camas County. They have challengers not in the primary races, but in the general election races. Now, it's interesting that if you're going to run for an office, whether it be the primary election race or the general election race, the filing deadline was the first 2 weeks of March, and in essence, it closed last Friday night at 5:00. That was the last the closing date for filing for any of these, either the primary election or the general election. So we now have a full listing of who's running, and some of them will be challenges in the primary election, and some of them will be challenges in the general election in the fall. So we have a pretty sizable list of.
I've only had a short amount of those people on the air so far. In fact, I'm still trying to get Rich Wills lined up because I had his primary opponent on the air, who you got to meet a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yeah, I've known Christy Zitto for 4 or 5 years.
I've known her for longer. Isn't that funny? And I'm not even from here.
Well, I served as chairman of the resolutions committee on the state party platform, and she was a member of that committee. And so I got acquainted with her by being involved in the resolutions committee. And Christy's a nice young lady. She's got her work cut out for her running against Rich Will.
But from what I understand among Republicans I've talked to, you can't really lose in this situation because both candidates would be better than any Democrat who would run for that seat.
We like to say that a lot. I know any Republican is going to be better than any Democrat you come up with. And I kind of have to maintain a neutrality issue here, but boy, Rich Wills he's a top-notch guy.
And former law enforcement officer.
I think he spent 30 years with Idaho State Police, and he's just pretty straight up. He has a good grasp of, and he digs into the stuff, the details of all this kind of stuff. You may remember no, you won't. You weren't here a year ago. You might have been. We had this deal about passing a bill which allowed us to interact with other nations internationally on collecting child support payments. And everybody was saying, "Oh, this is terrible. We're going to be subjecting ourselves to foreign laws." And
remember that, yeah.
Okay. Well, one of the interesting thing that happens in legislative process, and it's just a technicality thing, if a bill comes out of the committee and goes to the floor, it is killed. It cannot come back to the General Assembly, the floor of the legislature, until the next session. Rich Wills could see what was going on and how this thing was so emotional, and everybody was, and he pulled a couple of levers on that thing and kept it in committee rather than let it go to the floor. And as a result, you remember they had a special session of the legislature lasted about 6 hours or something. But Wills was able to navigate that thing and keep it intact. And then the governor had to call a special session. In the meantime, everyone was able to get their arms around this thing and discover exactly what it says and what it's going to do. And in the heat of closing the regular session of the legislature, some of these things get trampled on. And Rich Wills was able to stay on top of that thing and make sure that it didn't get trampled. They had to come back for a special session. Okay, fine, everybody can scream about that, but he navigated the waters on that one very carefully.
We've got more with Steve Millington on the way in just a few minutes. We're coming up on 8:30. It's 34. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. A lot of women have tossed their hat in the ring to run this year. What we're going to talk about in the next segment is a study by Harvard University that says even women would rather have men as their leaders. I know that's going to annoy some people, but that's what the study says. The guest joining us in the studio, Steve Millington, a familiar voice, of course, to people across the Magic Valley. It's 8:33. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Committee. We call it committee, right?
Yeah, it's called a county committee.
And 34 right now. We're up a degree since our last check of the temperature. And Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Telephone number to reach the program, 736-0300. We were talking about this just before the break. I pulled this down from Washington Examiner. Young girls and their moms prefer male politicians. This is from a Harvard study. It's not a conservative study, but it says overwhelmingly that women, moms and their daughters, and college women too, would prefer men as their leaders. And even men, of course, prefer men, although 56% of men say they could go either way, but 40% say that they want a male leader, and only 4% of men say they would want a woman leading them. And it says this may be the reason that Hillary Clinton is having such a difficult time against Bernie Sanders.
It could be one of the issues that she's facing.
And he's not even macho.
No, well, no, and he's further to the left than she is. It's interesting how she has turned her wagon to the left to try to keep up with him, because he is apparently drawing large crowds.
Yeah, and his crowds are bigger than anybody but Trump's, and sometimes bigger than Trump's.
Sometimes bigger than Trump's, absolutely. And he is 6 weeks ago, well, a month ago, he was way behind Hillary Clinton in nearly any poll you wanted to look at. And as of Saturday or Sunday, the last time they had any polls and were able to get them posted, he's pulled right up within striking distance in 2 or 3 of the larger states. Illinois is going to be a tough battle for Hillary Clinton to win. She should be in Florida with not too much trouble.
She was born in Illinois, we should point out, too,
yeah,
right? Her
that's
home state.
Correct. I'm not sure. I didn't see the polling for Ohio. I spent all my time looking at the Republican numbers, and I didn't look at the Democrat numbers. Shame on me. Okay, fine. But I looked at the Republican numbers, but you listen to the news reports, and Sanders is really picking up a lot of ground in a lot of areas. So he might surprise Hillary Clinton today.
It would be, from my perspective, quite pleasurable just to see that happen. 8:36, Bill Colley with you on Top Story, and Steve Millington.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
He's waiting to take a telephone call. And caller, you're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, Steve, clarify me if I'm sadly mistaken. There is a constitutionally verified amendment to balance the budget here in Idaho. Am I right or am I wrong?
I don't think that Idaho's budget is always constitutionally mandated that it has to be balanced. The bill
Thank you.
I think the bill that you were talking about is
you didn't want to hear the answer.
The federal budget issue, and I don't think that one got out of the Idaho legislature.
It didn't. They did not. We're not going to take part in any constitutional convention on the federal level.
Even if it is only for one specific item. So they say. And the real issue with any constitutional convention is, I know that Mark Levine has said several times, yes, we can create a document which limits the agenda to a single item, but nobody really wants to bet on that.
Here's the thing to keep in mind. I think all 50 states have to balance their budgets because they don't have a printing press.
That's true.
So
now in Idaho, it has to be balanced when it leaves the legislature.
You can float a bond. You can borrow.
You could borrow against it, but there's just no interest in doing that. Not here in Idaho. So that doesn't happen here.
I want to point out too that that bill got a lot of attention, but it did die in committee.
Yeah, it never made it out.
And we should point out too as well that even I think some of the territories. Well, Puerto Rico, I guess, is not one of them. Puerto Rico's a basket case, so
it is.
They may not have a balanced budget amendment or a requirement in their constitution.
In Puerto Rico, they don't.
So we'll be bailing them out for all of their malfeasance.
And I don't remember what the number is, but it seems to me like it was in the hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yes.
And we're talking Puerto Rico. For crying out loud, we have more people in the Treasure Valley of Idaho than they have in Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico is surrounded by beautiful beaches, and you would think that if they would just play up that for the tourist industry, but the tourists won't go there because you get robbed.
And the people who live there want a free everything. And so one article that I read some time back about, this is contributing to Puerto Rico's problem, had something to do with electrical costs. And the government just picks up all the cost of electricity.
I wonder if we could turn Puerto Rico over to the Castro brothers and just say, hey.
Why don't you guys fix this?
We have a break coming up in just a moment. More of your telephone calls as well.
Shame on us, Bill.
It's 8:39. Of course, Steve Millington joining us. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Committee. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story. I have never visited there. I had a friend in college, and she married a fellow from Puerto Rico and moved there. But I remember her telling me the crime. This was 30 years ago. More than 30 years ago. The crime situation was just outrageous.
Out of control.
Which is why they can't really make a lot of money off tourism, which you would think in such a beautiful spot would happen. But it doesn't happen.
Nope.
We've got more on the way. Bill Colley with you and Steve Millington here until 9 o'clock on KLIX. Steve Millington joining us in studio this morning. He is the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. It's 8:43. It's 35 right now. Bill Colley, go ahead.
It's warmed up 2 degrees since I got here this morning. That just goes to tell you that I really bring a lot of hot air to the place.
We bring a Democrat in, it'll go up 15. We bring in Hillary Clinton, it'll go up 30.
Yeah, it'll be.
Barack Obama will be broiling.
Hey, man, we'll all be in shirt sleeves and shorts.
And, of course, we have a caller joining us on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And, caller, you're on the air with Steve Millington and Bill Colley.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. I wanted to thank the senators that voted against the call for a constitutional convention. I think the vote was 23-12, but it did make it out of committee initially. But the main reason I'm calling is there's a bill. I don't think it's out of committee, but I'm not sure. It's House Bill 568. This one has to do with preventing any foreign laws to be introduced or used in our Idaho courts. I know it's brought a lot of controversy, but the big problem is that we have a situation where Islam is considered a religion, but it's more of a theocracy and have a political agenda to it. So it really does not apply that the Establishment Clause of the Constitution would protect it as a religion because of its political agenda. And I'd like you to comment on that, but it's a good bill. It's been crafted well. Of course, it's getting a lot of hits from CARE, which is basically their ACLU for the Muslims, and they're tied right in with the Muslim Brotherhood. So, we need to wake up what's going on because Sharia law is already coming into other places like Dearborn, Michigan, et cetera. So I'd like you to comment about that. Thank you.
Well, I really wish that I didn't have to comment on that one this morning. However, I'm not completely sure, but in checking with a couple of members of the legislature and just asking questions, I don't think that particular bill is going to get onto the floor of the legislature this go-round. There seemed to be some question as to whether or not it would actually get out of committee and be considered on the House floor. And a bill like that has to originate, I shouldn't say that. Typically, they originate in the House side of the legislature. And they weren't completely sure that one was going to get out and get onto the floor. And here's an interesting thing about this kind of stuff that goes on up there in that legislature. Why wasn't a bill like this that's going to have some controversy and some real awkward issues? Why didn't it show up 30 days ago or 6 weeks ago so that they could have discussed it and beat it up and pounded on it? And why does it show up at the last minute?
If I'm the person introducing it, I'll get it out there as early as I can, right?
Well,
You would think, logically.
But you see, it goes to a committee, and then the committee chairman will determine when they hold a hearing on it in that committee and whether or not it will actually get introduced or forwarded, printed. I think they call it, they print the bill to send it to the floor. Whether the bill gets printed, therefore it goes to the floor. And I think it just got held up. And now that we're looking, the legislature will not recess this week. It's going to be the middle part of next week before they get done.
Right.
And so you bring it out at the last minute in hopes that in the passion, the heat of shutting down and going home, that it does not drag everything down with it. And so everybody just says, oh, let's go ahead and vote for it. Let's get out of here and go home.
Well,
that's a bad idea.
In a related, just a quick topic, I mentioned it in the first half hour, but the folks who have been working to have a referendum on the CSI Refugee Resettlement Program, they have a meeting tonight, informational meeting at 7:30 at the Rock Creek Fire District at Red Cap Corner. So just get that out of the way again, because otherwise I'm not going to turn it over to the community billboard, which will happen if I don't mention that.
That's right.
We have another caller with us.
Okay.
You're up next. You're on the air at 8:48 on KLIX.
Good morning.
Morning. Steve, did you say that you had a list of all the people that are running?
Yes, I do.
I saw something on Facebook this morning that our buddy Jill Scheme is running for something.
That is correct. Jill Scheme has filed for the position of county commissioner in District 3, Zone 3, I think they call it, in Twin Falls County. She filed as a Democrat. As of Friday night, when the filing deadline completed, she had no challengers. That means that she will immediately progress forward to the general election in November. So her race will be contested in November at the general election. She has no challenger in the primary elections, so she advances automatically to the general election. And she will be running against either George Urey or Jack Johnson. And I think there's an independent in District 3. I apologize. I looked at that this morning quickly and spaced it. Shame on me, but I spaced it. So I
like Jill to death. She's a very good person, but God help us if her politics get in.
Thank you.
Thank you for the.
That's a good call. Thanks.
Thank you for the. Well, we were talking about this off air earlier, and I said, because of her name recognition, she has somewhat of an advantage.
She does.
Number two, she's got a very solid core of people who will support her. But as far as the breadth of that core, I don't know how big it gets beyond that.
Now, there's a couple of things we need to maybe mention just quickly about county commissioner races. We have 3 county commissioners in Twin Falls. Well, in any county in the state of Idaho, we have 3 of them. And the county is divided into 3 zones. So, or districts. I don't remember whether they call it. Never mind the semantics. There are 3 zones in Twin Falls County: Zone 1, 2, and 3. So you must file in the zone in which you reside. However, the actual election, you can vote for anybody, any voter anywhere in Twin Falls County votes for all of the commissioner races. So even though you are elected from one zone, the vote encompasses all voters in the county. So Zone 1 and Zone 2 will also vote for the people running in Zone 3. We also have a contested race in Zone 2. And so everybody in the county will vote for the participants, candidates in that particular zone. So she's filed in Zone 3, which is kind of the east end of Twin Falls County. Her race will be contested at the general election in November.
And we have another caller with us. We should point out it's 8:51. It's 34 right now at our studios. Steve Millington, the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party, joining us with me, Bill Colley, Top Story. And you're up next. You're on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com.
Whoops.
Almost.
Talked him out of it.
736-0300, 736-0300. Look, on the national stage today, just got to share one quick note. This is John Kasich speaking last night to Fox News. I believe he was on the air with potentially Megyn Kelly. But take a listen to this. He thinks that all he needs to do is win his home state today, and that he's going to be scot-free.
I'm not going to get in projecting what's going to happen. This is the craziest election that we've had in decades. And I'm taking things a day at a time. Look, I'm running for president because I have the experience, the record, and the skills to lead this country. I'm not interested in any parlor game or electing a class president. I'm interested in being president of the United States because I know how to handle international affairs, and I know what it takes to fix the economy.
I read a story today in the Washington Times that said Donald Trump is slipping now finally in all polls. And all of these people saying, well, if Kasich wins his home state today, by golly, it's a whole new ballgame. And he's expected to win his home state, for crying out loud.
Well, he should be expected to win his home state. However, I looked at a couple of polls this morning. I cannot tell you the time frame during which the poll was conducted. They used a broad a calendar date that went from March 6 to March 13. We don't know how many of them was done early and how many of them was done later. However, the Quinnipiac.
Right, Quinnipiac out of Connecticut.
Okay, I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. Quinnipiac. They have Kasich and Trump dead even, 38 and 38. Now there was another poll, can't remember the name of it because I didn't want to think about it. There was another poll that had Kasich up by 4 points.
That might have been Monmouth.
Monmouth, that's the word. That's the one. Monmouth had Kasich up by 4 points, but that had changed. Kasich's lead had shrunk in the last 2 weeks, and Trump had increased his percentage during that same 2-week period of time. So if we see a little bit of a shift, there's an outside chance that Trump could win Ohio. Trump is up in Florida by as low as 17 points, and one of them had him up by 24 points this morning when I looked at the polls.
Yeah, that's not going to change much at that.
Yeah, that's. And if that's the case, I think Mr. Rubio will go back to Florida and sit on the sideline.
He certainly will. 8:54. We have another caller with us. You're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. I read years ago when the Clintons went into the Arkansas State House that education was ranked 49th, and after all the years that they were there, it was ranked 49th when they left. Also, Hillary wants to be president so she can pardon herself.
That's excellent. That's one that I had not thought of. That is excellent.
When he was running for president the first time around, Saturday Night Live did a sketch, and he's at the podium, and he's explaining about the great things about Arkansas under his leadership. And he says, my state leads the country in being number one and people being crushed by falling stones. It's 8:55. Look, a couple of minutes left. You have the other Republican candidates who are blaming Trump for what happened in Chicago last week. And a lot of Republicans are saying that was a really bad idea to join liberal media and claiming it's all Trump's fault. What's your take?
I agree with the folks who are saying that you guys assessed that incorrectly. There are several people who are saying, one that I read this morning early, I like to get up early, and on Tuesday mornings I get up really early. But I think Pat Buchanan wrote it.
Oh, and called them whips.
Yes. He said, imagine the outrage. Imagine the outrage in the media if a group of people wearing Trump T-shirts and carrying Trump signs had showed up at a Hillary Clinton event. The media would have gone completely insane. But Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders people can show up at a Donald Trump event and create so much havoc and disruption that it's canceled, and the media wants to blame Trump. How does that work? How does that work? It just, one of the things that has kind of kept Trump right at the top edge and solidified a group of people behind him, and it seems to be growing. He hates the media. And he has said that over and over and over. The media is our enemy. They are against us. Look what they've done here. Look what they've done there, blah, blah, blah. And we see that very thing happening last Friday night in Chicago. when I got wind of it, I turned on the television and I was just sitting there looking at it, and I was dumbfounded. I said, I can't believe this is happening. I remember watching the 1968 Democrat convention in Chicago.
Right. One of my old bosses, David Schumacher, his wife got tossed through a plate glass window
Yeah.
during those riots.
I wasn't there, wasn't close, and the television coverage was not nearly as good as it is today. But I remember watching that on the clips on television and thinking to myself, good gracious, how can this be happening? How can it possibly be happening? And then you get to looking at who's behind all this stuff.
Fight fire with fire. If they decide to disrupt the Cleveland convention, then what we need to do is organize, my view, and disrupt theirs.
I'm
Except our people are polite. They would just stand outside and sing a couple of hymns, and that would be the end
and
of
then
it.
they'd all go home. I think that this portends an even greater issue as we go forward towards the convention. For one thing, it's going to be summertime when we have a convention, and these things always spiral out of control in warm weather. And I think if I were the city of Cleveland, I would say, would you guys consider moving your convention somewhere else?
I'll tell you what, this political season, from my perspective, as a talk show host, this is the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, yeah. We never run out of things to talk about.
Next Tuesday, we'll talk a little bit about the Democrats because they have a caucus coming up next week in Idaho.
They do. Next Tuesday night.
A lot of predictions. Sanders may show very, very well. Steve Millington, thank you for coming by.
Thanks, Bill. See you next week.
All right, super. In fact, we want to point out we'll have some coverage that night, too, as well. Steve may or may not be with us. He may end up being a spy over at the Democrat caucus.
Don't call me that.
It's 35. 9 o'clock news is just ahead. One more hour of top story as well.